You've heard of the Secure Act just passed by Congress and signed by the president, but how secure does that really make you?
You are listening to Wealth Talks, the Secure Act. It is a hot topic right now, just signed by the president December 20th, 2019. The mainstream media seems to think that this is going to help people save more in their 401k and IRA plans for retirement, because everyone needs to save more for retirement, right? But are you saving in the right place still yet? And that remains a very big concern with the Secure Act.
Well, there's some things that with any act passed by Congress that are questionable. Anytime there's something put into place to supposedly protect us by the Congress, we need to be looking at why they did it. It's usually revenue driven because they need more money to pay for all of their promises and their entitlement programs that they're set forth. So one of the things in the Secure Act is that it's going to give your employer a tax credit for automatically enrolling you.
It does. And so what that means is if your employer sets it up automatically, so a certain percentage of your paycheck comes out and goes into your 401k, your 457, whatever type of plan it is, then your employer will get a tax credit for automatically doing that. You can still opt out if you decide it's not in your best interest for a certain percentage of your paycheck every month to be going to the plan, but that's up to you to take that initiative. And some plans have had automatic enrollment for a while now, but that's going to become more common now with the Secure Act giving the employer a tax credit for doing so.
And something you need to understand too is that most of these automatic enrolled 401k plans that many states have already enacted something like this with an IRA or 401k or 403b. You need to understand that 70% of them, according to MarketWatch, are invested in target date mutual funds, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Target date mutual funds. That is interesting. So real quick on the Secure Act, another change that they made is for inherited IRAs or 401ks. That means that if you die and leave the balance to somebody, or someone dies and leaves the balance to you, the rules on how you can take that have changed. And what does that mean?
Well, the stretch IRA is gone. Mm-hmm. We can't stretch it out over our lifetime if I pass on my 401k balance to you, because they say now that the IRS needs its money, it needs its taxes that it's been deferring all of my life, and so the person that inherits that is going to have to pay those taxes over a 10-year period of time. They want that money to come out quick. Right. They want to get their money back. Now, there is an exemption for spousal, and there's an exemption for dependent children. And maybe if I leave it to somebody that's 10 years my junior, but no older, but no younger than that, there might be an exemption. But all that fine details still in the working.
Right, and that's interesting because just take the example here real quick. You said, what if I inherited your IRA at a certain point? Well, what that's going to force me to do is instead of taking those contributions over my lifetime, now I'm going to have to take them within 10 years, which depending on the value of the IRA or the 401k could dramatically increase the rate of income tax that I pay because I'm already earning an income.
Yeah, so it could put you in a higher income tax. It could jump you from the 24th to the 36th percentile. It could jump you from the 22nd to the 24th. Mm-hmm. And so the IRS, knowing this and writing this bill with Congress, they knew they would get more taxes out of it. That's why they did it.
Yes, and that's obvious. Reading the online articles, this bill will increase taxes that the government can collect.
The other thing it did is it delayed the time where you're required to take your required minimal distributions.
Yeah, by like a year and a half. Mm-hmm. So you used to have to start taking required minimum distributions when you were at age 70 and a half. That is now age 72. So, hey, we gave you a year and a half here in exchange for cutting down the window for inherited IRAs. We're going to give you a couple years on the.
But let's look at that. At that point in life, most people are either going to need that money or they're not.
Yeah.
And along with that, pushing out the required minimal distribution date to 72 from 70 and a half, you can also contribute to your IRA. But how much do you really need to be contributing to an IRA at that point? You're not going to see that much compound growth on it. Mm-hmm. And the only reason someone would be doing that if they were making a lot of money and trying to defer money still at that time.
True.
But even then, that is going to come back and bite you in taxes if you're not careful.
You're going to have to take it at some point, right?
You got to take it at some point, either that or the next person is.
Or the next person is. And if the next person takes it, then they're going to have to take it sooner than later because of the new 10-year window rule. So that is an interesting point there. Yes, it would maybe help you get more money into your IRA 401k, but is that really a good thing?
Yeah, it's those are numbers that have to be crunched at the time to find out if it fits your objectives or not. Now, there are some good things that are that could happen from this. One of those is that they've taken the responsibility of buying an annuity in your 401k, 403b, 457 plan, whatever it is. They've taken the responsibility of that annuity's performance away from your employer and placed it where it rightfully belongs with the insurance company.
Yes, and that could mean that for people who already have assets in 401ks, 457s, 403bs, those type of plans, if you're to retirement and you want to make sure that there's a guaranteed income stream from those assets for your lifetime without having to worry about the market performance anymore, now the rules, this Secure Act has opened up the regulations to allow a wider range of annuities to be purchased within your existing plan. So that could be a good thing. We don't know what those options look like yet, but in general, it should provide more options for you, more secure guaranteed income from those assets.
Well, over and over again, the major concern of Americans today when they retire is, am I going to run out of money? Are you going to run out of money when you retire? And this annuity factor in the Secure Act could be the answer to that solution if it's done right. It's not just a blanket statement, but with a guaranteed annuity, then what happens is you've got a fixed guaranteed income for life, or an income that goes up with inflation, adjusted for inflation that goes up, that goes for life. That could take care of that concern for a lot of people if the annuity is designed right.
Right. And of course, there's a lot of annuities that might not be the best to be placed in there. So you want to take a look at that when the time comes.
Yeah. Another way to look at that, though, is do you want the annuity to be inside your 401k, or do you want to just roll that into an annuity, a part of your 401k to be rolled into a guaranteed annuity at some time in the future when you're ready for that guaranteed fixed income for life?
Yeah, so sometimes it is better to separate those things instead of rolling it all together in one. You just have to look at the options when you get there. So we don't know exactly what's going to be best until you get there and you look at the numbers. What
sometimes it's going to be a greater income, sometimes it's not. And we don't know what interest rates are going to be in the future, but right now they're not really, really high. But even then, there are people that guaranteed fixed income is really important because they understand the market volatility. And when you're 70, 70 and a half, 72, you're too old to make it up again if the market crashes.
Yeah. So that brings up the question you brought up earlier about the target date mutual funds. That's where a lot of these plans are invested. People will say, well, that's going to help shift the risk as you get older. So when you're 70 and a half, 72, you're not taking so much risk in the market anymore. Mm-hmm. What is that? Is that lesser risk really worth it, the way they structure this?
Well, according to MarketWatch, target date mutual funds are more expensive and less effective than a simple investment plan, primarily due to what's called the expense ratio charged on target dates.
Okay, so the cost of running the trades?
It's usually over 0.5%.
Okay.
So, and if we look at that 0.5% eaten away over and over and over again. Plus
0.5% doesn't seem like a lot, but when you realize it's taken out every year.
Right, and then the fact that the target dates by nature become less aggressive and quote unquote more secure as you get older, but that means the return drops on them as well.
Yeah. And what does target date mean exactly?
Well, you're targeting your retirement age.
Okay.
And so, or the day that you're going to need an income stream from this fund that you're setting up.
All right.
And so what happens is the managers of that fund have to actively be looking at it and adjusting it for risk. And supposedly you're supposed to be more risk tolerant when you're younger. Mm-hmm. And as you get older, you're supposed to be less risk tolerant.
That's what they say.
That's what they say, but we've talked about that before, and that doesn't. We're always talking about loss tolerance rather than risk tolerance, because who wants to lose $1,000 for the opportunity to make one?
Okay.
Nobody.
Yeah, no.
But that's a high risk tolerance level if you want to do that. Mm-hmm. But a low loss tolerance would say no, that's stupid. So it's the loss tolerance is more important than the risk tolerance, in my opinion. And of course, that's why we work with guaranteed contracts that are legally binding, so that we're protecting people's money. Okay, mm-hmm. But if let's say that the expense ratio is only 0.4%. Okay. So it's not the average that MarketWatch is saying of 0.51. It's only 0.4.
Okay.
Okay. And we're going to pay taxes of a mere 2%, which is maybe, maybe it's more, maybe it's less, but that's really a good average, because these capital gains could be, income tax, and if you're in a high income tax bracket, it could be much higher than that.
Yeah, so it could be capital gains or it could be income tax?
Depending on if it's in deferred or non-deferred, qualified or non-qualified.
Sure, so it depends
accounts.
on how it's held.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So let's just say at a 0.4% expense ratio and a 2% tax liability, that $2 million that people are saying you can get by having a 401k invested in target dates of $800 a month all those years, okay, is going to drop to about half, just a little over $1 million. Okay. So just on the expense ratio and the taxes, you're not a multimillionaire like a lot of people will tell you by investing in target funds. You're just barely a millionaire, if that.
And what rate of return is this earning?
They're shooting for a 7% rate of return.
7%, okay.
Which we've got to say, is that really likely? Now, we're in a really upswing in the market. Things are going really good for a lot of people. But if we go back over the last 20 years, the S&P 500 index has only experienced an annualized return of 4.164. So if
That's not all that high.
So if we take that 4.164 instead of the 7 that people are projecting, and we keep the expense ratio at 0.4%, then that $2 million that you were expecting at 7% is reduced to only $557,000.
Wow.
That's a huge difference.
Quite a bit less.
That's a huge difference.
Okay.
But your expense ratio is the same. Your cost basis is still $384,000 because you've been putting $800,000 per month. $800 per month in here since you were 25. Now you're 65.
Sure.
That's 480 months, or $384,000.
And that higher expense ratio, just to be clear, that means you paid more to the money managers during those years. That's
a fee.
Yeah.
So, it's just called something. It's called an expense ratio rather than a fee.
Yeah. So it was a way for the money managers to make more.
And so, in essence, what you've done is reduced your expected return of 7% down to less than 1%, just by fees and taxes. And those fees and taxes are not that significant because it's less than the average, and the taxes are nominal. And we're just using an actual market return over the last 20 years of the S&P 500.
Mm-hmm. So what happens if... now we're seeing the side of the coin here that, well, is the 401k, is the IRA, is that really the best place to be putting your money?
Well, control is one of the things that when you give up, you lose the ability to be able to exercise your freedom to take care of opportunities that come your way. Mm-hmm. And if you've listened to this podcast very long, you know that we're all about helping you control your own money, because those who control the money make the money. We don't like people to lose money. We don't want you to lose money. And yet we're looking at people today that have followed typical financial planning advice, and they're dependent on Social Security. 90% of Americans today that are retiring are getting 1/3 of their income from Social Security.
Wow.
That doesn't make sense if all these 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, and 457 plans really work like they're supposed to work. But we know that even the founder of the 401k now says it was one of the worst things that ever happened, because it used to be a legal binding contract when you got into this, but then it expanded so that you could do this, you could do that, and now you had multiple things,
options.
and then you had to hire these managers, and now we're seeing what those managers are costing you in this target date mutual fund.
Yeah. So if we're to play devil's advocate here, the people that are going to be coming in and saying, well, you'll be able to put more money into your retirement plans. Probably that's true. You'll be able to accumulate higher balances because you're putting more in. But does that mean it's a really good tool at growing your money that you do put in? And it's still out of your control. So what would be an alternative to putting more money into qualified plans? I mean, if you have money in there, that's one thing. Maybe the Secure Act will help you by being able to continue to maximize what you have there, not having to withdraw it till 72. Maybe it'll hurt you if you intended to leave that money to the next generation. What are the alternatives if you're
there's different plans. There's different plans for different people. You know, some 401ks, the employer will put money in there whether you match it or not. And in that situation, it's like, duh, that's free money. Take it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The other way is that the employer will match up to 50% or 6% or whatever it is that you contribute to your 401k up to the limitations. And that could be, say, it's free money too, but at the same time, it's your money combined with free money, and you've got to decide whether the risk of the market is worth your money going after the free money and joining it. And that's a decision that, shouldn't be taken lightly. You should sit down and think about it and realize, well, what could this do? It's kind of a gamble because that's what's happening. And then there's some of the plans that really don't match anything. It's just you putting it in there, like an IRA. And if you're just putting the money in there, or you're the employee and the employer, you got to really think about it. Why am I putting my money in on top of money I've already contributed?
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's a
how
good
much
question.
Control does that give you, and where can it be invested, and what can I do with it, and how can I control it? And so that's one of the reasons that we are so encouraged to see how life insurance takes care of your money. Because if we take the same example, $800 a month for, from 25 to 65, that's 480 months. And if you just put that $800 into a life insurance policy with high cash value growth, then you'll have $714,000 by the time you're 65, guaranteed with a binding contract that it will be there for you.
Yeah, that's no market risk.
Which is a whole lot more than the 557 that you had if you only got the return of the S&P 500 for the last 20 years.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Now, that 714 is not going to have any taxes with it. And there's also going to be a death benefit of their $1.6 million, which also is going to be passed on to the next generation without taxes, like the Secure Act is for some people to do.
Yeah, because that death benefit is income tax-free, isn't it?
It is.
That's big.
Now,
now taxes, though, does bring up a question I was going to ask you. If you're contributing $800 a month to the qualified plan, you get a tax deduction for that today, but you're going to have to pay tax in the future. With this, you have to pay the tax on that $800 today, right?
That's true. And so what tax bracket are you in, and what that tax is. So you may be contributing a little bit less after you've paid the taxes,
but you may not. But you will pay less taxes on those premiums than you would pay on this $714,000.
Oh, absolutely.
Once it grows in there.
And of course, then we haven't even talked about dividends. With dividends, there's a big possibility that $714,000 could be over $1 million. Okay? And $1 million tax-free is a whole lot more than the $1 million that's taxed.
Always.
Okay. So, and the other thing that we really haven't talked about here is if your money's in a 401k, how easy is it to leverage it?
Not at all. I mean, you
It's
could get it
difficult.
maybe for if you're a first-time home buyer, if you're doing an adoption, you can take a penalty-free withdrawal.
Maybe for a birth of a
Yeah,
child, maybe
yeah.
for the first down payment on your first house, maybe for educational expenses, maybe.
It's limited.
It's limited. With the money in the life insurance policy, it keeps growing, whether you leverage it or whether you don't. And we talked earlier on that opportunity comes along just every so often in your life.
Oh, yeah. For example, let's say you get 10 years into this plan, and you're comparing to your brother or a family member 10 years down. They have their money tied up in a 401k in target date mutual funds, and they can't really take it out because the market's down right now. And if they take out the money, they lock in their loss. Mm-hmm. Whereas you can access your money from the guaranteed values of the whole life insurance policy and go buy some of those great opportunities while the market is down, some of those great assets, and you just wait for the market to bounce back and you make your money back plus some.
Well, I think one of the things that maybe the Secure
opportunity.
Act is helping people do is to realize that, hey, we're not saving enough in America today.
That is true.
But just like ERISA in the first place didn't help people start saving more than the 14% they were saving in the mid-'70s, we've actually gone downhill since ERISA was started. And, of course, ERISA is the qualified plan 401k type thing, all right? That's what it was initiated for. Is we thought that Congress said America wasn't saving enough, and we were saving 14% of our income at that time. It didn't help.
No.
And I don't think this is going to help if we just stick with the government plan. But if we take the overall idea that Americans aren't saving enough because we're not, if that many people are retiring dependent on Social Security for a third of their income. So the key there is to save, even if it's less, earlier in life.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting to say, oh, when I start making X amount of money, I'll start saving. It's better to say, no, what percentage of what I'm making right now am I going to live on? Mm-hmm. And what am I going to keep for the rest of my life so that I'm not dependent on Social Security when I retire?
Yes.
That's more important.
Yes. And are you going to save that? Are you going to throw good money after the other money that you're saving into qualified plans and whatnot where you don't have control of it? Or would you rather save that extra money in a place where you do have control over it all of those years? What
Exactly.
And that's the life insurance that we're talking about. I think it makes a very good combination there.
And, you know, if you're thinking of money that is guaranteed and can't be taken away from you, you have to realize that there's just very few places that can happen in our society today. One of them is treasuries, either bonds, bills, or notes. They're backed up by the government, okay? The other one is certificates of deposit, which are backed up by the bank that you get that deposit certificate from, plus the FDIC, which is basically American taxpayers, or participating whole life insurance. And participating whole life insurance is backed up not by the government, but by the past performance of the company that issues it, and they give a binding legal contract to say, this is what you'll have in 40 years or in 30 years or in 60 years or whatever it is.
Yeah. And since we're talking about the banks being backed up by the FDIC, there is no FDIC with insurance, but there is a reinsurance system. So an insurance company never assumes 100% of the risks that it writes on its books. It goes out to reinsurance companies, which are other insurance companies that insure insurance companies. And so you have that layer of protection, additional layer behind the scenes as well. States will also tend to have insurance guarantee funds to help back that up.
Well, I always think of what Warren Buffett says, the 2 rules to creating wealth. Number 1 is never lose money, and number 2 is never forget rule number 1. And that's why we need a place that gives us a binding contract, a legally binding contract, that the money we put there will not only grow, but that it won't erode with volatility in the market, and it will be there for us when we need it. Either when we want to leverage it for an opportunity or when we need it for retirement.
Very good. So come join us in Las Vegas, January 18th for a wealth workshop. It's time to stop losing money with typical financial planning. You'll discover how to use life insurance as a financial tool while you're living so you can keep more of the money you make and have financial peace of mind. That's what we'll be covering January 18th. That's a Saturday. Martin Luther King weekend right here in Las Vegas. So come to Las Vegas. It's easy to get tickets, airline tickets, and you have an extra day with Martin Luther King weekend.
So how can we get to that event?
Yes, it's on the website. I'll also include a link in the podcast resources here. You can go to life-benefits.com and go to the events. You'll see it right there on the website, or it will be here in the podcast resources. You can also call our office at 702-660-7000.
So don't miss that upcoming event on January the 18th. Right here in Las Vegas at our CPA's office, new office, Jack Cohen. And Jack will be there presenting about some interesting tax strategies for 2020. You'll be hearing from myself and John and my wife, Michelle, and also Ben about how to use life insurance so that you can keep more of the money that you're making.
You are listening to Wealth Talk, so we talk about solutions for your prosperity. Have a wonderful week.